We're going to be going till about 11 o'clock. You can use chat to communicate with any of us as need be. We do have one order of business just to get out of the way. It's the approval of the August 26th meeting minutes. And if, as we do, is someone can raise their hand to make a first and second, we'll do it that way. I have Sue Barrett making the motion and Julie Lomax seconding it. And then Dina will put a vote up on the screen.
Panelists cannot vote. Oh, all right.
So you have what you need there, Dina?
Yep, I got over half of the attendees voting, which is probably where we are. So I think that's great. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Now we are recording the meeting, so later viewing will be possible too. We'll start off with a presentation on Springbrook Phase 2 with Eric Knighty, Director of Natural Resources, and Scott Meister, Manager of Natural Resources for the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County. Stephen, did you want to make any other introduction on the project?
Well, I think that Scott and Eric will probably cover that, but just noting that this is a project on the list of projects for the special assessment at the DRSCW. And the tollway stepped in to fund the vast majority of the project. So we were able to redirect funds that we had allocated to this into other projects, but we are funding a lot of the monitoring and the sort of follow-up on for the area around the project to be covered in that. But just noting that the tollways increased participation here has meant that we've freed up dollars to flow into our other projects.
So welcome, Eric and Scott, and thank you for presenting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for inviting us here. Go ahead and share my screen. Is that working?
Yes.
Excellent, thanks. Well, I know some of you guys have already heard about Springbrook, so I won't bore you with the background, but I thought for today's presentation, I'd talk to you about the operations and the construction and highlight two of the challenges that we had with this project and tell you where we're at with the current project. Spoiler alert is we're almost done, hooray. And sorry, I served as the project manager for the construction, so I oversaw the contractor in his daily operations. So I have just one quick slide about the background of the project. Springbrook Creek, as it flows through Blackwell Forest Preserve, enters the preserve under Winfield Road. If you can see my arrow and cursor here, you can see the creek on the old aerial pre-construction and how it was channelized. It was very straight and narrow. And then the water began to back up into this impoundment that you can see on the aerial here. And the reason for this backup was because there was a dam on the creek. Technically, it was probably just a weir, but it was at this location down here that caused the water to back up. As the water flowed over the weir and through a spillway, there was a change in elevation that was about 7 feet before the creek continued to flow in a very channelized fashion further into the forest preserve. So that 7-foot drop in the dam was one of the main reasons we wanted to restore Springbrook. That dam was creating very poor aquatic conditions and really impeding fish passage into parts upstream. And so the project itself wanted to reroute the stream and meander it and create better habitat. So we had divided the project up into kind of 3 sections. A downstream section here that was west of what we call Arrow Road, and an upstream section here immediately west of Winfield. And the strategy in these 2 areas was to create a meandering stream very similar to what we had done with the first phase of the project immediately upstream in St. James Farm in 2015. We're creating deeper pools, riffles, and other features that I'll show you in a few slides. The middle section of the project, what we're calling Reach B, was inside the footprint of the impoundment. And our strategy here was a little bit different. We knew that there was sediment that had backed up behind that dam, and it was very soft, very erosive. And so we don't have as severe bends or meanders in the middle reach, far less sinuous. We wanted to prevent any potential for future erosion by creating some hard points along the stream. We also decided in Reach B, in this middle section, to line the banks of the stream with cobble, just to provide some more armament and keep the stream where we wanted it to be, and not give it any chance to deviate off course. Another major component of the project was to reroute the trail system. The regional trail that you can see on the old aerial photo here in white, it was in a very low area, and it crossed the creek at a bridge that was deteriorating. So the project called for rerouting of the trail to higher ground, and installing a brand new bridge, and reconnecting it through the rest of Blackwell. So that's the background. We had wanted to begin the project in late April of 2019, early May. But as you may recall, the past 2 Mays, we've had record rains. Working in the floodplain and all the rain was not conducive for construction. So by the time the May rains subsided and the ground dried out, it was really about July 4th of 2019 before we began this project. And we began at the downstream end of the project. So you can see the drier conditions in July. Construction, this is, there are a number of cottonwood trees that had to be removed from the project site for construction. So we repurposed those trees in the root wads and stuck them into the outside bends of the banks. So you can imagine, here's the beginnings of the new stream channel. You can see we laid gravel, sand, and cobble matrix down in the bottom of the new stream channel to create a good substrate for invertebrates and fish. We had deeper pools, and construction went pretty well in this Reach A, or this downstream section. So here's another picture of construction. We created, we installed bank barbs, which are these rows of boulders that are built into the banks of the creek at an angle. So during storm events and as water rises in the creek, the water would be, as it flows over those boulders, would be directed back towards the center of the creek. You can see here's one of the deeper pools. And the water that you see in the pool is just all groundwater fed at this point. But you can see the point bars, or the shallow areas on the inside of bends, we armored with rock and cobble, and this was a change from our phase 1. And one more quick thing to point out in this picture here is the a riffle, what we're calling a sill. So a sill is actually a row of boulders in the bottom of the creek that is going to help with the gradual elevation change and keep any sort of potential head cutting in the future from creating deeper pools. So these sills, there's 13 of them throughout the entire length of the project, and each consecutive sill is about 6 inches change in elevation. So we make up that 7 feet drop that I told you about earlier throughout the entire length of the stream stretch to allow a gradual grade, which is far more conducive for fish passage. So here's a shot from the end of August of 2019. It took about 2 months to create this downstream third of the project, what we call in Reach A. So you can see any place where there's this gravel across the center of the stream here and here, and here are those sills that provide that gradual change in elevation. For reference, we're looking southwest. Here's the old Springbrook channel as it's currently flowing in this picture. All this water, again, is before we diverted water flow into the new channel. It's just all groundwater that you see in the stream. Another thing of note is here's the rough grading for the new trail alignment. So Reach A went really smoothly. Again, this was last summer. And then, so in preparation of moving into the next stretch, Reach B, which was the impoundment area, we began to dewater that, the impoundment. So here's a picture of the dam or the weir structure. It was really just a series of I-beams that were pounded into the ground. There's some concrete slabs that were then slid into the I-beams. And there were some boards in the center that we were allowed to take out to manipulate the water level. But the creek flow then flowed into a large 84-inch culvert. So we knew that the sediment was going to be very, very soft. We knew there was some backup of sediment behind the dam. I want to say the original plans, there were two things that we needed to accomplish. One, we had to dewater the impoundment itself and be able to get our construction crews in that sediment to be able to build the new stream channel. So in order to dewater, to accomplish this, the original plans called for a cofferdam. So this darker gray band running the lengthwise of the impoundment was a cofferdam that would allow the creek to still flow on one side of the dam while we were able to construct the new channel on the other side of the cofferdam in drier conditions. So we began to remove the structure itself. And we know that there was going to be some sediment behind the dam. And of course, it's illegal to discharge sediment off site. So as water's flowing now from the left side of the screen through over the dam and through this culvert, we have about 1,500 feet downstream before the project ends. We know that sediment will slowly settle out over a long stretch. So 15 feet, we felt, we hoped was a good amount for that sediment to settle. We also installed some sediment controls. Oh, I'm sorry, here's just another picture of the dam itself looking upstream with one of those construction or concrete slabs removed. But we installed a series of erosion and sediment controls, some rock check dams along the downstream stretches of the creek. We installed some jute fabric, some flock blocks to try to help trap sediment as it would move downstream, still with the hope that after 1,500 feet, it would all settle out. Just another silt curtain that we installed. But what we were finding was that the sediment was actually a lot finer and a lot deeper than we were expecting. And it wasn't all settling out. We put in some temporary sheet pile and tried to get another check dam in on the upstream side. But as we were putting this rock into the sediment, it was just sinking and sinking and sinking. And it was very clear we were having trouble controlling the sediment. So thankfully, the dam, the way it was constructed with those concrete slabs, we were able to put those slabs back in the dam and keep water in the impoundment until we can rethink this whole process and come up with a better solution to keep all the sediment on site. So after speaking with our contractor, we come up with the idea to do a bypass channel. So a bypass channel is something that's been done successfully at other project sites, including Oak Meadows, where the plan is to dig a brand new channel as the stream flows into the preserve, divert it before it hits the impoundment, reroute it, let it flow, and outlet back into the stream immediately on the downstream side of that dam, just circumventing all of that soft sediment movement of that sediment. This, of course, it wasn't in our original permit and an original plan, so we had to go back to the Army Corps of Engineers in DuPage County and get permission for this bypass channel. So at this point, we're August, September 2019. In order to create an engineered plan for this and get approval, it was going to take a couple months. So we had given the contractor 2 years to complete this project. So the contractor kind of decided that, well, we're probably going to hold off to construct this Reach B until the summer of 2020, when the conditions were a lot drier and more conducive for getting equipment into the impoundment. So we got approval from the Corps and from DuPage County to construct the bypass channel. So our contractor started on this in December of 2019. So the dam is just immediately off the screen to the left. And here's just the beginning of the bypass channel itself. The contractor has laid this fabric lining in that channel just to help prevent groundwater movement into the channel, and really it was only meant for the stream flow itself. So here's a picture of the finished bypass channel on the north end of the project looking downstream. So the contractor finished this bypass channel in shortly after the new year, early January of 2020. Again, I'm going to wait for dry conditions to construct that center stretch. They moved into the northern third of the project near Mac Road. And again, the philosophy here was same as the downstream, have some deeper pools, incorporate some riffles, some bank barbs. And again, even this picture is from February. We had pretty good success. The construction of this reach went pretty smoothly in January and February. And again, this is all the water that you see in there is all groundwater. The stream is still flowing in the old channel at this point. So here's a kind of a picture when we had dewatered the impoundment. I can just see and feel how soft and wet the sediment is. I don't know if that comes through in the picture or not. But we had this other issue. Even though now we're diverting water around the impoundment, we still have to get construction traffic, equipment into this stretch to build the new stream channel. And knowing that it's deeper than we anticipated and seeing how those rocks for that temporary check dam just sank into the sediment, there were big concerns about how to construct it. So here's what we had decided, again, after talking to our engineers and our contractor. What you see in the black or the gray is the original cross-section that's per the plans. What you see in red is what the contractor proposed and what we ended up agreeing to. We needed to go and dig deeper and get all of that sediment out so that we have something stable to build upon, so that the creek channel doesn't want to move off of the course that we designed for it. But to go deeper and to remove all that sediment also meant that we had to go wider to prevent the slides from sloughing in and collapsing on us. So even though the proposed construction, the channel was good 25, 30 feet wide from top of bank to top of bank, we needed to excavate another 16 feet at least on each side of the channel. So again, we began waiting for drier conditions. This process began about July 4th of 2020. At that point, the impoundment area, the sediments had become vegetated. So that's what you see here is this is where the sediment is. But the contractor started by excavating an area as far as he can reach and digging down as deep as he could reach. The sediment is kind of this blacker area, and we were able to dig deep to what I'm going to call this gray clay, which was a little bit more stable. Not really stable enough to support trucks though. So what we ended up doing was bringing in then some better clay. I'm going to call it brown clay. I'm not the best soil scientist, so gray clay and brown clay are the terms I'll be using. But we would bring the brown clay in, compact it, and it almost creates a roadway for our equipment to then continue the excavation work. So you can see then once we had compacted that brown clay, the excavator could drive on it and then reach out as far as he can and begin to excavate that sediment in the next 20 to 30 feet down to the gray stuff, bring more brown in and drive on that. So this kind of just shows you the width that we had to dig in many locations, 50 to 60 feet wide. Again, over extended in the impoundment. Just another example, maybe show you a perspective on how deep we had to go in some of these areas. So it was a very slow process, digging 20 to 30 feet at a time of the impoundment, the new stream within the impoundment. So eventually what started happening was you bring that brown clay in and compact it, and you start creating almost like a little roadway system, which will be a sturdy base for the new stream channel to sit upon. Once the contractor worked its way slowly upstream through the impoundment, and there was about halfway point, we had created an access point where trucks can drive through the woods to get to the new stream channel. So once we got about halfway up, the contractor began to finish the stream channel into what it's supposed to look like. So they brought more clay in, which is this darker brown, to fill in the sides. And then here you can see the bottom of the stream channel, which is that sand, gravel, cobble matrix. that we used in the other reaches. So over time, there's the bottom of the stream. Like I said earlier, we rock line the sides of the channel to help provide some stability. So the creek channel as it flows would stay in its intended location. And so here's what the reach B looked like. So the photos I was just showing you were down in this section towards the top of the screen. We're at the north end of the project looking southwest. So once contractors got to that point, here's that little access point through the woods I was talking about. Once we got to this section, contractors then, once we got to this section, I should say the deep sediment stopped. We were able to continue digging the new stream channel in Reach B, pretty typical of how we did the other two sections. So the deeper sediment was really only in the downstream section of the impoundment. So here's that access point through the woods. The contractor, it's still soft material, so they had to create this roadway network of timber mats to help gain them access to the site. So here you can kind of see this, with the area that was cleared, this is that good 50 to 60 foot wide stretch that we had to dig and over excavate. And then the dam is right about here in the top part of the screen. So once we figured out what we were doing with that over excavation, how far we had to dig, digging the stream channel was slow, but it was steady, and it ended up working, and it ended up working really well. So just kind of an example of a challenge that we certainly had to work through, but we got the stream built. So we finished completing really all of the stream channel then by August of this year, 2020, and then by September, we were able to divert the water from the old channel into the new channel. So just before I conclude here, a couple more highlights. I do want to say the vegetation has been responding incredibly. Our contractor V3 hit a great planting window at the end of April and the beginning of May for the two stretches that were completed in 2019. So there's a lot of plugs. The entire project calls for 100,000 plugs to be planted, as well as all the areas to be seeded. So in April, before the spring rains hit, the V3 planted most of the plugs. So by summertime, the vegetation was growing incredibly. Black-eyed Susan's in bloom, the rush along the creek edge, the darker area came in really good, and so did the arrowhead. Just a couple more pictures. We had cardinal flower blooming this summer, as well as the native hibiscus was also blooming this past summer in the areas that we had completed construction. So that was some highlight. And then also some of you may have also heard that we relocated fish from the old stream channel. Once the water was diverted into the new channel, the old channel became isolated. So we took electroshocking equipment to do a survey, which gently stuns the fish, allows them to float to the surface of the water where we can capture them with nets. And we captured over 1,100 fish of 23 species that were then relocated to the new channel to help jumpstart the biota in the new channel. So a couple of highlights. So that's really all I had prepared. The last thing I wanted to share was a quick video that the Forest Preserve District put together and shared on our social media site last week. It's just a quick 3-minute video that kind of gives an overall view of the project, one suitable for the public. I'm not the most eloquent, especially when on camera, so I'll just say enjoy the scenery in this video. We're having trouble with some audio, so Deanna, if you can go ahead and share your screen and play the video, that'd be awesome.
Okay, let me unmute myself so that this plays.
We're here at Blackwell Forest Preserve today.
Is it being seen and heard?
Second phase of
Yes.
our restoration project along Springbrook. Here at Blackwell, there used to be a dam on the creek. The dam itself created an impoundment, but it had very, very shallow water, and there were a lot of sediment that backed up behind the dam. That caused an environment that was not conducive for fish, freshwater mussels, macroinvertebrates, and our aquatic organisms. water quality was very poor behind the dam, and there was very little dissolved oxygen. And so as part of the project, we removed that dam to help remove that condition and provide for better habitat. Another change of this project was to take the former stream, which was channelized, it was straight and narrow, and create a meandering stream, one with twists and turns and bends. By doing so, we created shallow areas that we call riffles, that allow water to babble over rocks and incorporate oxygen into the water. We also created deeper pools, which provide shelter for fish during high storm events. Before restoration, the floodplain did not have a high diversity of plants. So part of our project is also to improve the vegetation along the creek and in the upland areas to create better habitat for wildlife. Just within the past month, I've seen wood ducks in the stream, and there was a kingfisher last week hunting from the railing of the new bridge. These are two bird species that I would not have expected and did not see prior to restoration along the creek. Prior to this project, the regional trail that runs through Blackwell was pretty low. It sat pretty close to the old stream. We moved the regional trail to higher ground up and out of the floodplain so that we don't have to close the trail during storm events. Another benefit of moving the trail to higher ground is to create better viewscapes. We've planted the restoration project with a diversity of plant species, so the wildflowers will pop and show a diversity of colors, and the diversity of plants will also bring in a diversity of wildlife. So the recreationists and the runners and walkers will be able to view a much more diverse wildlife population. Thank you for your patience during this project. It's been closed for 2 seasons now, and I know that's been an inconvenience for some people unable to use the trail, but we're happy to have the trail reopening this fall.
Thank you, Deanna, for sharing that. I did forget to mention that kind of where we're at now with the project. We are wrapping up. The contractor this week is pulling all their equipment off site, removing the silt fence and construction fence. There's a small section of the service road that needs to be asphalted yet. That will likely happen next week. We're hoping to open the regional trail. Right now we're looking at Friday, so really, really soon. There's some winter work that needs to happen in clearing some of the vegetation in the upland, the non-native woody species like buckthorn and honeysuckle. And then of course our contractor is on the hook for 7 years to maintain the vegetation in the site. So after 2 construction seasons, I'm certainly ready for the project to be done and move into the maintenance phase. So thanks everyone for listening. I don't see any, I don't know if there's time for photos. Are we taking photos, or if I can certainly answer them in the chat box as we continue.
Yeah, I'm sure we have time for questions, and we do have at least one right now. And then somebody asked, Matt Larson asked, do you know how closely the project put the stream back into the condition it was prior to any man-made changes, the dam or the culverts, for example?
You know, we're really unsure where exactly it was prior to the man-made conditions. We researched and looked back on old aerials going back to '39, and it was already channelized at that point. It was really difficult, even with other projects. Sometimes it's difficult to other projects where you know what the pre-existing or pre-settlement conditions were. You have to design the stream for today's conditions. We're living in an environment that is very, very different to the historic conditions. All of our streams in DuPage County are accepting a lot more stormwater than they naturally would have. And so it's important to take those factors into consideration when designing the stream.
I have no more questions, but if anyone has any questions, if you could put them either in the chat or the Q&A, that's fine. I got another question. The question is, in general, how was the earthwork handled? Did the temporary channel get backfilled with the same soil? Was most of the soil sent off-site from the lake?
No.
Those are a couple of questions.
Yeah, no. When the temporary bypass channel was built, all of that material was stockpiled in a very specific location. Once we diverted flow into the new channel, that stockpile was then used to fill that temporary channel back in. So it is going to remain as upland reseeded with prairie. I think that's was high enough that it's going to be a prairie mix. But almost all the material that we used was on site. We had to bring a little bit of that clay in from another project, but we sourced a lot of materials from on site.
And Holly Hudson with CMAP asked, how long did permitting take?
Well, we had a couple of revisions, so permitting took a little bit longer than maybe it would typically occur. I'd say, I think it was pretty typical. It was, once we finalized our design, it was probably within a year.
Okay. And Dennis Stryker asks, he says, I know there was an uncommon species of mussels discovered. What were those again? And have they been returned to the site?
Yes. So prior to construction, we, just like we did a fish survey and relocated all the fish, we had been doing a number of mussel surveys in the Old Creek Channel. And during the course of those surveys, we found Lilliput, which is a relatively small freshwater mussel that's native to the area. So we had removed all of those individuals, and those have been returned to Springbrook. They were moved just a little bit downstream of the project site into an area that was already established in terms of the biologics of the stream. There's sometimes it's best to allow the native vegetation to rebound in a new stream, let all the algae begin to grow in a new stream before you put mussels in a new construction project. So we moved those Lilliput's just downstream of the project.
Greg Ulrich with Carroll Stream asks, how was it doing construction in the winter? Any specific challenges or advantages?
We really had no problems in the winter, at least this past winter. The ground, you know, we had a relatively mild winter, so ground wasn't frozen, so that's an advantage in some regard. But disadvantage is you're working in softer ground. So we were able to, I don't want to say get around it, but by using those timber mats and creating a nice roadway on the soft ground, we, you know, reduce the amount of impact to the wetlands, and it provides us access to be able to construct the stream. So we didn't really have any issues with constructing that small section in the winter time. We didn't have a lot of snow, so, you know, being able to you know, see where we were working was not an issue at all. So it went really smoothly.
Amy Reese with Naperville has asked, who was the contractor and what was the final cost of the project?
We executed a contract with V3, who was actually the same company that constructed phase 1 in St. James Farm. It was an incredibly close bid opening. I think we had 5, maybe 6 contractors bid on the project. V3 came in at $7.423 million, and the next contractor came in at $7.435. So a difference of $23,000 between the lowest bidder and the next bidder. So V3 bid 7.4. We built in a contingency and executed the contract for $8 million. That over excavation that I talked about was a big change in price. And so we used almost the entire $8 million to construct this project, again, funded by the tollway.
And then did V3 perform the work with its own forces, or were they acting as the GC?
The vast majority of the work V3 did. They subbed a couple of the tasks, like the tree removal work, the actual bridge construction, and the laying the asphalt. That was subcontracted, but everything else was done by V3.
And Greg left you a comment, but because I also second his comment, I will repeat it. He says, great presentation. We thank you for being here. And he also joked that when V3 is done, they're going to do some work for Carroll Stream. So keep them moving so they can get over to his project.
That's their next project. I did know that. So thank you all for listening. And again, if Stephen and Deanna have my contact information, I'd be happy to answer more questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Scott, and congratulations to you and Eric and Ed Stevenson, your director. You have a vision, and we're lucky to have you as a partner. So we really appreciate you being here. All right, Stephen, can you continue with our other items, please?
Yeah, so to get all this exciting stuff in the grind, of course, there's a lot of paperwork that needs shuffled. So let's look at some of the other satellite items here. So going to item number 3, which is the permit special conditions. So this is the proposed permit extension, which would put another 3 years onto plants who are treatment plants who elected to take advantage of it, and it would generate additional funding to fund obviously projects like we were just looking at. So to date, I've listed the plants there who have given verbal indication that they wish to take advantage of this. One plant to date has filled in the written commitment, and so that commitment would come into force if the executive board decided that we had enough funds to make the process viable. Based on the verbal commitments at the moment, it looks like we're in that. I would be happy making the, in other words, if everybody made the verbal commitment, signed on to the paperwork at this time, I would be happy to make the recommendation to the board that we did proceed. So that is looking promising. Staff is currently working to pull together the proposal to go to US EPA, who will be the final hurdle in getting this accepted. Also, just a recommendation that if your community runs a wastewater treatment facility, that you do check out the US EPA ECHO site. This is a site that tracks permit violations. Matt Stryker, a couple of years ago, had contacted us, noting that there were a number of violations for his plant up there, including some paperwork to be supplied by DRSCW. All of the items were erroneous listings. It just seems like there was a breakdown perhaps between IEPA and US EPA by getting that information in place. But it wasn't limited to that kind of paperwork. There was also some plant items there. I believe they were all erroneous listings. So we're just recommending that you do check the site out, and if you notice that there are violations listed on there that are not correct, that you let IEPA know. I will get back in touch with Amy Dragovich to check who it was that we got in contact with at that time, let you know to follow up with them and get those items taken off the website. And also thanks to Amy Underwood, who was the one that brought our attention to it in this latest iteration, but it should be something that, and we'll also make a note to just occasionally go on there and check to see what's being listed. Okay, on to physical projects. So no sampling at Oak Meadows this year. Our 3-year intensive sampling.
Stephen, we have a question on that. The question was, do you anticipate any changes in POTW permits following the approval of those most recent 2010, I guess they are, TMDL reports? The fecal coliform and chloride ones, and those upper DO ones.
Yeah, we do not. So well, for the DRSCW, not. We will have to look more closely at the Naperville and Bolingbrook and Plainfield. There was some scenarios in there which included things to plant. We think the TMDL is written in such a way that that will not be the effect, but that will be something we will track for those 3 facilities.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing is that the TMDL is based on having a fecal limit of that 500 of the fecal standard. So if you are not treating for fecal, you may be required to treat and test for fecal.
Yeah.
But I think most of our plants already are, but that would be the big change that we would expect from those.
Yep. It's a good question. And I guess we just also could address that right at this time. So these are what we're talking about is what we call the 2009 TMDLs. They were published and approved. Obviously, it was there was quite a long process, but I'd really like to thank you, IEPA, for really working hand in glove with us on that. We did collect a lot of additional data, including using our DO probes to collect continuous data at the sites over an extended period of time. We collected additional water water quality data, just to make sure that those models were well populated. And IEPA was just really good during the whole process, and allowed us to review the documents and everything. So much smoother process to get that TMDL delivered than what we had back in 2000 to 2004. Okay, then moving on to number 4, already covered Oak Meadows, going to Faywell Dam. We have submitted a draft plan to DuPage County Stormwater. This obviously is the 3rd iteration of that particular project. We've come up with a system of a baffle system which would run through one of the culverts, so there would be no change to the actual dam itself, which is a flood control structure with moving parts. So we think that this design takes into account any, that structure can continue to operate like that, but would secure fish passage. This particular dam, of course, doesn't really have a water quality impact per se. There's not a lot of sedimentation behind the dam, very minimal. There's also, there's not really an impoundment there. It's a flow through structure, but the problem is on the downstream side, there is a drop. And this system is designed to even that out and provide some still water where fish could push their way through. So looking for, if county stormwater approves this design, then we would immediately go into permitting off this, which we're hoping would be relatively straightforward, as we already had started permitting on the previous much more extensive modifications. Okay, so on to the the big item on the agenda then, the Growy Mill Dam. So the petition from the DRSCW to the Forest Preserve District to allow the dam at Fullersburg Woods to be removed and replaced with a rock riffle structure, which we were referring to as the concept master plan, has been approved by the Forest Preserve by a vote of 5-2. And so this project is moving forward into the final design bid packets and then into construction. Dina has been running the process of getting the next set of contracts pulled together. Dina, do you want to speak to that quickly?
Sorry, I had trouble getting off mute. So we are going to be issuing a request for statements of interest, hopefully today, to solicit bids for the next phase, which will actually be the finishing up with the design, the permitting, as well as preparation of construction bid documents. So when we're finished with this next phase, we'll be able to go to bid for construction. We're using a 2-step process. The first will be the submit a review of the SOIs that will be done by the executive board. We'll shortlist a minimum of 3 firms and ask for a detailed request for proposal. Once again, the executive board will identify the contractor from those submitted RFPs, and then we will go ahead and negotiate contracts just like we have in the past. The projects committee should be hearing from me hopefully in the next couple weeks with the draft of that RFP, so that when we get that short list of firms, we can get that, we can keep the process rolling. We'll be back, probably not to our February meeting. I mean, I would like to get this, I don't think I'll be able to get a contractor identified by our early December meeting. So we'll be back in February with an update, hopefully be able to present and get a contractor approved in a budget for the moving forward with that project. We'll have to talk about the procedure for that, but we should have a contractor and be moving forward, come the new year.
Obviously, we're doing everything we can to make sure this moves as smoothly forward as possible. There are a couple of items worth noting. The way this is set up is the Forest Preserve had granted a license agreement to the DRSCW. That license agreement was sent out to all members. That license agreement has been signed by the Dave and by Rick, who is the secretary of the DRSCW. There's a few people I want to note that, getting this through, obviously this project is a very high profile project. And I'd just like to note the number of members who pushed to get this completed. We had 15 members who sent in letters from their either from their boards or their mayor or their city administrator. Also like to make special note of Mayor Steve Morley of City of Elmhurst, who has really been just a star in helping get this done. You know, he wrote letters to newspapers, spoke at one of the meetings. Also like to note Connie Smith of Sierra Club, Steve Pescatelli of IDNR, and Dave Jakubiak, for he's a private citizen, who all called into the Forest Preserve and spoke in favor of the project. Also prior to the final vote, Brooke McDonald of the Conservation Foundation, Tom Trudison, who is a commissioner at Oak Brook Park District, and our own Rick Federici of Addison and Alan Lang of Wooddale, both lent their support, along with Salt Creek Watershed Network, Scott Sack, and Dennis Wisconski, a private citizen who is affiliated with Trout Unlimited, and Willie Berkshire, who is president of Oak Brook Trout Unlimited. Reason I want to call those people out is that it's, you know, their support was very much appreciated. It was important that the Forest Preserve saw that there was a wide range of groups who were supportive of this project, both from the taxpayer perspective and the environmental perspective. Obviously, everything that we do at the project is going to take into account the historical nature of the site, and we're going to leave a great project for Village of Oak Brook and for the folks at the Grow Mill, and make sure we hit all the right notes and get a project everybody can be proud of. There's a whole list of materials here which are listed and associated with it. Obviously, this has been a big staff commitment over the last several months. We've had several news articles that have already come out about the project. I'm not going to track through all of them, but if you have any questions about any of these steps involved here, then please reach out to either Dina or myself, and we'll be only too happy to answer them. Dina, was there anything, because I know there's a lot of items in there and I want to go through all of them, anything you think that I should have brought up that I didn't?
I mean, I think it's important to mention, in case you hear about it, there was a bill, and it's mentioned in a couple of those articles, that the local representative from that Oak Brook area that also represents some folk, I think Elmhurst, Hinsdale, it's like it kind of straddles that 294 corridor in that area, did introduce a bill that would seek to set up an advisory council that would govern everything that happens at the Growy Mill, the dam, and the impoundment. We have spoken with our connections with the legislature. We don't foresee this bill being acted upon in this session. We only have a 7-day veto session that's starting, I think it starts right after the election. This is not something that would be addressed during the veto session, so there's really no need for us to take action on it. Right now, the bill is just sort of sitting. It has no co-sponsors. It has not been signed for the committee. So the earliest we'd actually see likely any action on this would be sometime in the spring. And there are some things going on that the bill may not even exist, could potentially not exist in the spring. So we're not focusing on it. I just think it's important that you know that it's out there. It's House Bill 5836. And if you have any questions or want to know sort of what we're thinking on that, just give Stephen or I a call. But we are tracking that. We are aware of it. And we will let you know if anything comes of that.
And of course, it's not clear that the state has any standing anyway in a forest preserve property. Okay.
So just one more thing, Stephen. I wanted to really recognize you and Dina for just a huge effort that you've put into this. And as you said recently, it had taken over your life. So
yeah, we were, yes, we're not going to miss the scrutiny of this particular project, and it's nice to get back to a lot of the other things that we are usually work on. They really add up a lot of time and effort that, you know, there was more, any day that went by, there was always more things you could do for this project.
There was just a lot of effort on both your behalf to educate people, a flurry of phone calls and emails, and everything was very respectful and patient. So I just encourage everyone to keep an eye on restoresaltcreek.org. That's where we've kept everything updated, including the letter that Oak Brook had sent and our reply that went to all members. So if you haven't seen the response, we did email it to the direct members, but I would encourage you to share that with people in your organization that should have seen that. So with that, thank you, and we can continue on.
Thanks very much, Dave. So, and actually, I do have one last thing to add to that. I should note that Dennis Stryker, of course, on the board, has been working on this project for over, well, I'm guessing as long as I have. So at least, 12, we're looking at 12 to 14 years, really 12, I guess, intensely. And he has been really good at coordinating behind the scenes, keeping everybody on task. And obviously, he could see a former manager of the Elmhurst wastewater treatment facility could clearly see the cost-benefit analysis to local communities of trying to build our way out of an issue caused by a damage to the stream corridor. So it was obviously he could really had a firsthand front row seat of the cost-benefit analysis on this kind of project. So we just want to recognize that Dennis really was a force in making this happen. Okay, we've already covered Springbrook Phase 2. Much more. That was, I have to say, just looking at Scott's pictures this morning, it's it's hard to recognize that's in DuPage County when you see a stream with meanders, etc., like that. And if you're actually, we'll see about setting up perhaps a visit for the DRCW to the site, but when you're there and you can hear the water rushing over riffles and stuff, it's really pretty neat experience. Okay, so additional physical projects. So we have the Lower West Branch, the Lower East Branch. Lower East Branch will be, staff will be pulling together SOIs, et cetera, for that project. Immediately, we were hoping to already have that done, but with Fullersburg, that took more time than anticipated. So that project has been pushed back a little bit, but that will be turning our attention to that now.
The project committee should accept a draft of that in the next week or so. I'm almost finished with it.
Good show. And obviously that's the last big project, not a controversial project. And obviously there's a lot of components, both habitat and perhaps stormwater management built into that particular project, which is a useful long-term investment. So Dina, we're moving into nutrient implementation plan. Do you want to take folks through this?
Sure, I'll hit my items and then see if you have any holes in that. So we'll start with the NSAC update, which is the Nutrient Science Advisory Council. But I'm gonna say I have one question. I just want to look at that. The website for the updates on the Growling Mill project is restoresaltcreek.org. RSTORSALT Creek CREEK.org, and Restore Salt Creek is all one word. And it's also in our agendas. Sorry, I just wanted to clear off some stuff before we went. Sorry, I have a lot of things going on my computer screen. Okay, so the NSAC report was the Nutrient Science Advisory Council report that had the limits on it. Hopefully here in the next week or so, we might get an update, but to my knowledge, the EPA is still reviewing that. And once they do review it, they will publish some sort of response. The Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy Committee is having its annual conference on November 6th. It is virtual. And usually that's, if we don't hear anything in between things, we usually at least get an update at that point on where that report is. The Nutrient if you're interested in attending it, send me an email. I can get you the registration information for that. It's going to be, a workshop where they sort of go through each of the components of the nutrient loss reduction strategy, from point sources to agricultural, and kind of go through what each of the committees are doing, science, monitoring, BMP practices, and things like that. It's usually fairly heavily on the ag side because that's where a lot of the development is being focused right now, because we have the limits on the permit side, but they do talk a little bit about some of the what's going on in the bigger picture in terms of nutrients. In terms of trading, this stream, we're really focused on that stream crediting trading. The next step is to have a conference between staff and MBI and our consulting team to see about use of the IPS model and helping us generate those stream credits. I got the questions from Tetra Tech and KNA to get to MBI yesterday, so I'll review those and get those out. And then we're going to give MBI a couple weeks to prepare answers, and then we're going to have a half-day or so workshop to sort of go through those. Sort of on other things that are going on with trading is I am currently sitting in a 4-hour-a-day Zoom conference put on by the the water quality trading not-for-profit group that's looking at trading across the nation. It's been fairly interesting. It's sort of like it's mainly geared towards state permit writers, but I've somehow been able to sneak in where they're sort of presenting what each state and that has an existing trading program or is in the process of developing one, where they are and what sort of their considerations are. The US EPA did mention that on the national front, if you remember, we did submit some comments to some draft language regarding baselines about a year ago now. They are expecting to have a response to that out here by the end of the new year, as well as some new regulations on trading so that states can start taking into to help make this more of a feasible option by defining where baselines are, what types of credits can be generated and things like that. So that's, we should see that by the end of the year, and I'll keep you posted on what's that going. And somebody asked if IEPA is attending the trading conference. I have no idea because I can't see the participants based on what they give me. I just can hear the speakers and see, I can't even see who's asking the questions. I just see the questions. So that's sort of what's going on with trading. We are starting to pick that back up and move forward with that again. And then there's obviously some national stuff going on. Other things that we have going on is we have full force into our qual to KW models. The East Branch is very near calibrated and validated. The projects committee got to see all those results on October 13th. So we're moving forward with the other models. We're going, it's kind of, we're gonna have Salt Creek, and then we'll have the lower DuPage and then the West Branch, mainly because we're trying to use the latest and greatest data. So, you know, we have 2019 data for the East Branch, 2016 data for Salt. The lower DuPage is 2018 or 2019. And then, you know, obviously we'll use the 2020 data for the West Branch, which is sort of why that one's being done last. We'll be starting here in the next couple of months to start running scenarios. The projects committee will be working heavily on that to see what we have going on. We've been asked, is the DRSEW doing the modeling? No, we have a contract with Tetra Tech who's handling that for us. The non-point source, I'll let Stephen come back to the non-point source wash-off model since he's sort of managing that. The expanded DO monitoring project, we had between our project team of having our 2 interns and having Alex on staff, that we all worked really hard and got a ton of field work done. We got all of our sites done. They're listed in the agenda for you. We even got our alternative or our hope if we have time site sampled. So we've made a ton of progress on that, and we're using a lab out of the University of Washington for our benthic algae data. So we should actually have a really good picture on what's going on with the West Branch in terms of nutrients and risk of eutrophication and stuff like that. The IPS model, the projects committee should be seeing the final draft of the report soon. Stephen and I are just sort of working on, now that Fuller's work's been put to bed, we have a couple textual things that we want changed in the report before we get that out there. Stephen, do you want to come back to the non-point source model?
Yeah. This obviously is part of the NIP, and one of the things that the US EPA and IPA had asked about was non-point source wash-off. As you know, reviewing the literature on that, there wasn't a lot out there about where phosphorus is coming from, and then we discovered that USGS work in Wisconsin, which geographically obviously was good for us, but then also showed that the phosphorus that they were detecting in stormwater runoff was coming nearly entirely from leaf litter. So that's what we've been focusing on. We've been putting together a database for the area. This is the whole of the DuPage Salt Creek Basin. When I say DuPage Basin, I include the area down into Will County with our partners, the lower DuPage Watershed Coalition. This is a big GIS exercise. We're using high resolution canopy layer, which was like part of a national project, but it's very specialized to this area, but there were a lot of partners around the country that worked on it, and we were fed into that data set from the Arboretum actually. And that has been very, very useful here. And then we've been able to overlay that onto streets. And when I say we, I have to note that we were very fortunate in that V3 approached us that during COVID, some of their projects were on ice, and that they had some free staff time, including a GIS specialist, and asked if he could be of any service to us. And so happened, we were just going into Fullersburg, and this, this was just perfect timing. So Erin Greco of V3 basically put this whole database together for us, and it's just been an enormous help. I'm glad I originally thought I would be doing it, and I really don't know where I would have found the time. So that has just been enormously helpful. The next step will be questionnaires going out to all members about their leaf litter practices. USGS in Wisconsin is helping us pull that together. They've already sent us some examples of what their municipal partners have been using as questionnaires there about those kinds of practices. So again, like with the chloride questionnaires, please fill these in. The more complete the replies and the coverage is, the better the final output will be. And you should be seeing that, I would say, in the next 4 weeks or so. You should be getting questionnaires. The projects committee obviously is going to have to take a swing at it prior to them being set out. And Dina, you've already covered IPS, so all right. Regulatory and legislative updates. Dina and I have been going to Springfield once a year. We didn't do it this year, obviously, because of the lockdown, and we'll have to follow up on how to complete this. We've probably been looking at integrating whatever form this is going to take in with the new permit negotiations. We have been in regular contact with permits about this, and obviously the fact that a number of our members' permits are being sat on at the moment until we get this whole item finalized. Okay, non-permit activities. Number 8, bioassessment plan. MBI is working on the 2019 draft report. Just note that they have already supplied a number of data out of this already, which is then put into the MS4 report. So there's a lot of the pollutants are supposed to be monitored as part of that, and so these bioassessments form the backbone of that. We turn that data over to the county, and it's integrated into the report. DuPage County in this case. West Branch, we say ongoing here, of course, the biological components of it and habitat have been completed, and staff are currently working on sediment chemistry. Just noting we have grid intern and Alex have just been really great working with it. It's good for the Dina and I that we can get this stuff knocked out and that we're not continuing to sample through into the early winter.
We should be finished this week as long as flows and weather cooperates, which is huge.
Already getting to the uncomfortable end of being in a river. We never heard back about the 319 watershed plan.
No, I asked the status from the IEPA and I have not heard back.
All right. So monitoring, fecal coliform has been completed on the West Branch. Once again, we do this as an addition to the bioassessment, as we were not collecting fecal coliform data, but it is required by the MS4 report. So we do a sort of a basin-wide assessment linked to some of our sample points, and once again, that data is turned over to county stormwater or to our Cook County members. It goes to them directly. Conductivity monitoring. This is for chloride tracking. Yeah, obviously, this that should have been taken out. Obviously, it's finished for last year. It's going to be started again in early December for the coming year. All right, moving on to chloride workshops. So, bit of a difference this year. We ran the chloride workshops virtually. So we had 3 of them, and these were done in collaboration with several of our watershed partners. The Lower DuPage Watershed Coalition, the Lower Des Plaines group, and there was cost sharing amongst the parties. We also opened the workshops up to our Lake County friends, and we had very good attendance. In fact, Nancy, if you want to unmute, you could quickly just take us through the numbers.
Yes, so we did two roads workshops, and between the 2 of them, we had 470 participants. At least we did a polling asking people how many were watching, how many were in the rooms. So that was the number we got back, which we thought was just excellent. Fewer for parking lots and sidewalks, but still a pretty good attendance.
And historically, it was the case.
Right, right. And then I just thought it was great, as Stephen mentioned, we opened it up to Lake County. And so we had participants from all the counties in this, this area, Cook and McHenry and Lake and Will, Kendall, Kane, and DuPage, of course. So I think we all felt pretty good about making these available to a wide group of people. Lake County did not hold theirs as usual, and I think some other groups didn't either. So that was very good. I just wanted to mention,
how many you had in parking lots and sidewalks?
123.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention about the technical briefs. We've done 2 so far, and if you missed them, they're posted on saltsmark.org. We recorded them. And the next 2 coming up are on November 10th. Scott Weber of Hanover Park is talking about the blades and benefits of segmented blades. And then on November 17th, Henderson Products is talking about brine making. And these are supposed to be educational, fairly short, 30 minutes long sort of thing, 8 a.m. on those Tuesday mornings. So might want to consider them or catch the recordings on saltsmark.org if you can't make it.
Yeah, and also the advantage of attending the live one is that you get to pose, you get to pose questions of the presenter.
Right, right.
We had a question back about the results for the fecal coliform sampling, and used results. Did everything look okay? I'm still getting those results as soon as I get them. Mary Beth, I'll share them with you in the county. I have 1 day's worth of results, and everything was actually like non-detect or below the standard. So as soon as I get the 5 days of sampling, I'll get them over to you.
Dina, for folks who are on the line who may not be aware of the way the fecal coliform sampling and the way you show if you're hitting the standard or not goes, could you just give us a 1-minute kind of how that works so people know about why we need multiple samples?
So the official fecal coliform standard is written as a geometric mean of 5 samples collected within a 30-day period. So that is why we are collecting 5 samples within a 30-day period, so that we can make an official assessment based on the water quality standard. The IEPA has historically used used thresholds, because obviously they do not have sampling data of 5 and 30 days, because their ambient monitoring program has 8 samples collected over a year, usually like once a month, with 4 months not sampled. So they can't make that assessment. So what the TMDLs and such have been based on is a sample, I believe it's for anytime they have one sample that exceeds 400 colonies per 100 mil, that would trigger that TMDL. So when you look at some of that data with the IEPA, a lot of times those TMDLs were triggered by like 1 or 2 samples over numerous years, which is if you were looking at a geometric mean over that 5 and 30, it might have been lower. Obviously with storm flows being high and regular flows being lower. So that's why we're sort of trying to get just a better picture of what's going on with the fecal coliform in the streams and collecting it by that 5 and 30 so we can actually compare it to the water quality standard. What we are doing is we are sampling at the end. My sampling plan for our watersheds has us sampling pretty much as close to we can at the end of each segment. So the IEPA has our streams divided into different segments. Like we talk about GB16 for like where Bolingbrook, Naperville, and Plainfield discharge to. I've been trying to get as close to I can at the end of those segments so that we can sort of look back at what the TMDLs are seeing for those various segments, because that's how the TMDLs are also constructed. Is that what you're looking for, Stephen?
That was perfect.
Thank you. It's probably more than you wanted.
Yeah, no, it was good. It's just, I think it's just good that folks who are perhaps not familiar with that standard understand why that, we get a bit of data in, but that may not be meaningful. We need to see the complete set. Okay. Also, I have a item to report. We'll be doing a fuller presentation on this item, but it's just want to mention it was that if you remember last year, Dina had did a presentation called What the Fungus. This was related to a growth that we had been alerted to in Salt Creek. This is the lower section of Salt Creek. There was a huge amount of biomass of, frankly, an alien-looking creature in the water, and we could not identify it. So we shared it with several labs, and I think it was eventually Chris Yoder at MBI who went, yeah, it's a bacteria. And then when we did some further lab work, that was confirmed. So since then, Dina and I have been out a couple of times just due to flows. We were unable to get into the river, try to identify what the source was. It's called sewer fungus, and it's a bacteria that thrives in DO compromised conditions when there's a lot of sugars and nutrients that are available to spur its growth. And there was an enormous amount of biomass in Lower Salt Creek from this. So we had delimited down to the Brookfield area, but we couldn't ascertain exactly where it was coming from. So over the last summer, MWRD have been out looking for it, and they have identified 2 sources. A storm sewer source. What they find is that there was a sugar company there which was unknowingly discharging sugars in their effluent into the storm system. But there was also a sanitary waste in the Brookfield area, which was entering the storm system as well. And both those were discharging into Salt Creek at that point. And they have taken action to make sure that both of those sources have been eliminated. We'll be doing a fuller presentation on this, either at the December meet or later, but it's a good story collaboration between partners. And we'll back to check that we see the fall off in that bacterial, it's a filamentous bacteria, so it looks like it's covered with, it looks like the floor of the stream and the water column is just filled with little jellyfish. That's what it looks like. So yeah, good result. And as I say, we'll cover it more fully at a later time, but just wanted to thank MWRD folks for staying on that and chasing it down to the end. Okay, Nancy, I think we're on to business items.
All right. We have a long chart of invoices that were paid in the last couple of months. I'm not going to go into those in detail, but if you have any questions about them, let us know. Moving on to the financial statements, we've gotten a good amount of our dues in. There's still some outstanding, and you can look at the membership dues chart to see about your organization. We did hear from City of Aurora that said due to budget constraints in particular this year, they would not be joining, but I think they're planning to come back when they can. Not too much to say under the administrative section in the financial report. Under program expenses, most of the expenses have been under monitoring, of course, a lot of activity there this year. Nothing yet under the Chloride Workshops, but we will be making some payments there very soon. We were pleased that we weren't sure how to price out the workshops and such, decided to do one registration fee per organization, knowing that the links could be shared. We figured that was the best way to do it, and we're pleasantly surprised with the number of participants and such. So things turned out there. We weren't sure how revenues were going to come in on that, but we should be okay. And then under special conditions, of course, there's been money going out for Fullersburg Woods Dam modification work there to AECom, and quite a bit paid to Tetra Tech for Qual 2K, and we made our payment to the Forest Preserve District for Springbrook, the Springbrook work. Moving on to the balance sheet, we have a nice sum of money in CDs, $4.3 million. Of course, most of that is set aside for projects. And I just did want to mention that interest rates, as you probably know, are near zero. So not getting a lot on that money, but they are at least, FDIC insured. Every $250,000 of that amount of money is FDIC insured. So that's that. And then I mentioned the membership dues. that you can review that. And if you have any questions about, you think your dues have been sent in and we don't have it listed there, just give Stephen or me send us an email or something. We'll check into it. There may be some checks that came in that, since I'm not in the office every day, so there may be some checks that have come in that I'm not aware of.
Thank you, Nancy.
For those?
Okay, so then the last items is our calendar. Obviously, a lot of this we already covered with Fullersburg. Just a couple of notes is that we were asked by US EPA to talk on a national webinar about chloride management, and we talked about implementation of the chloride TMDL. Also like to thank Jan Hammer at the foundation and on the DRSCW board for helping manage the chloride workshops. This year, obviously, well, I've taken that role in the past. It was this year I was completely eaten up with Fullersburg. Just want to note there is that we have been asked by the Urban Stormwater Working Group to talk about, this is for the nutrient load reduction strategy, to talk about our NIP development, including things like the development of local standards for nutrients. And I volunteered for that, and that's going to be at their December meeting. Any other questions about any of the items on number 14 there, please either contact us directly or drop them into the chat bar. And then we got the future meetings all set out. And wow, that's the end of the agenda.
Very good. I wanted to mention the PDH certificates. I'll be sending those out in November. I know in this COVID time, it's harder to get PDHs for those of us that need them. So we can award one per meeting. So we appreciate your attendance, and it's at least worth one PDH. And we'll check the attendance sheet from this and other meetings. And as there are workshops, notably by Conservation Foundation in DuPage County, we will also endeavor to share those also. Anything else before we adjourn?
Dave, I had one additional item, just going back to Scott and Eric's presentation earlier, was just like to, it was some very interesting problem solving in that project, given the soupiness of the substrate in the impoundment. So just I thought the staff handled it really well. It was one of those things like, well, this isn't what we expected, but you know, have to find a way. So, you know, I think they did a great job on that.
I'm looking forward to taking my bike out there and seeing the finished project. I understand it should be open to the public pretty soon. So encourage everybody to get out there before the winter falls. All right, with that, thank you again for attending. We can take a motion to adjourn by raising of hands, please. Okay, motion by Steve Zahner and second by Dan Rosenwinkel. And we don't need a vote on that. Thank you all. We'll see you on December 9th, hopefully. Stay well.
Thank you, everyone. Dave, is this pre-trip grooming? Oh, you're muted there.
When are you guys going?
We're leaving tomorrow at noon.
And
So
what section are you heading out to?
We'll do 50 miles from Delafield down to Whitewater.
So that's sort of on the Ice Age Kettle Moraine course once you get in. So it's sort of like the North Face course coming that way. Does that hit Scuppernong? Scuppernong's the other way from Delafield.
Yes, that's just north of there, I think. Yeah, looking forward to it. We're going to stay in one of the Ice Age shelters. It's going to be cold at night, but
better you than me.
It'd be nice to get away for a couple days.
Yeah, I have a new sleeping bag, and I haven't tested it in freezing conditions yet. So I'm hoping the manufacturer is good to their word. So Eric, Scott did a great job.
Yeah, he's happy. He's happy it's over. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Dina, I see we're still recording, so if you want to.
Oh, sorry, we can edit that out. Sorry.